Ladies and gentlemen, everybody in this room wants happiness. Every one of us. Doesn't matter your age, your background, your bank account, or where you come from. At the end of the day, we all want peace. We all want joy. We all want to smile without pretending. But let me tell you the truth, happiness doesn't just happen to you. Happiness depends on how you choose to live your life. When people think about happiness, most of them imagine it as something that will arrive one day, almost like a guest knocking on their door, unexpected but welcome. They picture happiness as a lottery ticket waiting to be won, a stroke of good fortune that shows up after the right job comes, the right person arrives, or the right season in life finally unfolds. But the truth is far less mysterious and far more empowering. Happiness is not something that simply happens to you. It is something you actively choose day by day, moment by moment. The biggest mistake people make is believing that happiness is dependent on circumstances, when in reality it is shaped by decisions. Think about how many times people say things like, when I buy that house, I'll finally feel content. Or when I lose this weight, then I'll be confident. Or when I get that promotion, my life will be complete. The problem with tying happiness to conditions is that conditions are temporary and circumstances are fragile. You might get the house and it feels great for a few months, but then you notice the bigger house next door and suddenly your joy is gone. You might get the promotion and it feels good, but then the pressure doubles and you find yourself more stressed than satisfied. If happiness only arrives after certain milestones, you'll live in a constant cycle of chasing joy, but never truly holding on to it. A powerful example of this comes from the Harvard Study of Adult Development, the longest running study on happiness in history. For over 80 years, researchers followed the lives of hundreds of people, tracking what made them feel fulfilled. They discovered something incredible. It wasn't wealth, it wasn't fame, it wasn't status that determined who lived happier lives. The real difference maker was perspective. Those who chose gratitude, who nurtured relationships, who learned to find meaning even in hardship, lived with greater joy than those who spent their lives chasing external achievements. This proves that happiness isn't about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to what happens. Let me put it this way, every morning when you wake up, before you even step out of bed, you have a decision to make. Will you focus on what you lack, or will you focus on what you have? Will you spend your day comparing your life to others, or will you spend it building your own? Two people can wake up in the same house, drive to the same job, face the same challenges, and yet live completely different emotional realities. One person decides, this is the worst day ever. The other decides, this is a chance for me to grow. The day is the same, but the choice changes everything. I remember hearing the story of a man who lost his job unexpectedly. His bills piled up, his plans collapsed, and his confidence was shaken. One man in that situation might fall into despair, believing life had ended. But this man chose differently. Instead of seeing it as the end, he saw it as a doorway. He told himself, this is my chance to pursue the dream I've been putting off. He started a small business, worked tirelessly, and years later that business not only supported his family, but inspired others in his community. Now, did life hand him easy circumstances? No. But his choice to see opportunity in hardship created happiness that no paycheck could buy. This is why happiness cannot be postponed until everything is perfect. Because if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll never live joyfully. The world will never line up all its stars for you. There will always be bills to pay, challenges to face, people who disappoint you, dreams that take longer than expected. But happiness is not found in waiting for perfection. It is found in the choice to embrace imperfection with gratitude. And here's the emotional truth. The people who live unhappiest lives are not the ones who went through the hardest trials, but the ones who constantly gave their power away by saying, I'll only be happy if life gives me what I want. That is a dangerous way to live, because you put your peace in someone else's hands. If someone else has to behave a certain way, if circumstances always have to turn out in your favor, if the world must bend to your expectations before you smile, then you'll never truly know joy. But when you say, I choose to be happy regardless of what life throws my way, then suddenly no one can take it from you. Happiness at its core is not an accident. It is not luck, it is a decision. And every time you choose it, you take back your power. One of the greatest truths about happiness is this: it is not about what happens to you, it is about how you interpret what happens to you. Two people can live through the exact same situation, experience the same storm, and yet walk away with completely different outcomes in their hearts. Why? Because perspective shapes everything. Perspective is the lens through which we see life, and if the lens is clouded with negativity, fear, or self-pity, then even good opportunities will look like burdens. But when the lens is clear, when it is filled with gratitude and resilience, then even challenges begin to look like stepping stones. Think about this for a moment. Imagine two students in the same classroom, taking the same difficult exam. Both of them fail. The first one throws up his hands in frustration and says, "I knew I wasn't smart enough. I'll never pass this subject." He gives up, and eventually his dreams slip away. The second student looks at the failing grade and says, "I didn't prepare well enough, but now I know what I need to do better." He studies harder, learns from his mistakes, and passes the next exam with flying colors. Same exam, same result, completely different mindset. And the difference between the two wasn't intelligence, it was perspective. Life is like that. The same setback can either destroy you or build you, depending on how you choose to see it. Happiness, therefore, is not determined by the size of the problem, but by the size of your perspective. A powerful real-world example comes from Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the horrors of Nazi concentration camps during World War II. Surrounded by suffering, stripped of freedom, and subjected to inhumane conditions, many people understandably lost hope. Yet Frankl discovered something profound. Even in the darkest circumstances, no one could take away his power to choose his attitude. He famously said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms: to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." Frankl's perspective gave him a reason to live, a sense of meaning, and even joy in moments where despair seemed inevitable. His story has inspired millions, proving that happiness is not locked inside circumstances, but inside the way you perceive them. Now let's bring this closer to home. Have you ever noticed how some people always find something to complain about? They could be on vacation, surrounded by beautiful scenery, yet they'll focus on the hotel room being too small or the food not being perfect. Meanwhile, another person could be sitting in the same place, eating the same meal, but they're smiling, taking pictures and saying, "I can't believe I get to experience this." The vacation didn't change. The weather didn't change. The only thing that changed was perspective. This is why gratitude is such a powerful practice. Gratitude doesn't remove your problems, but it changes how you see them. Research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who regularly practice gratitude experience more optimism, better health, and higher levels of overall happiness. It wasn't that their lives were magically easier. It was that they trained their minds to see blessings where others only saw burdens. Gratitude sharpens your perspective, and perspective shapes your joy. Even in daily life, perspective is what separates bitterness from contentment. Two co-workers can work the same long hours in the same office. One drags himself home every night, complaining about the workload, telling himself he is trapped. The other goes home tired but thankful, saying, "I'm grateful I have a job that helps me provide for my family." Which one goes to bed happier? Which one wakes up with more peace? The answer isn't in the office, the answer is in perspective. And here's the truth: we often forget perspective is a choice. You may not get to choose the storm, but you always get to choose how you see it. You don't control who hurts you, but you control whether you hold on to the wound or release it. You don't control the failures, but you control whether you let them define you or refine you. Happiness belongs to the person who looks at hardship and says, "This is not the end of me, this is the making of me." Perspective is the difference between a setback and a setup. Perspective is the bridge that turns pain into purpose. Perspective is what allows you to smile, not because everything is perfect, but because you decided to see possibility where others only see problems. And when you master perspective, you unlock a level of happiness that no circumstance can take away. We live in a world where most people are taught to measure happiness by what they can accumulate. From a young age, the message is clear: get more, buy more, achieve more, and then you will finally feel fulfilled. Advertisements bombard us daily with the same promise. If you purchase this product, if you drive this car, if you wear these clothes, you will finally feel complete. And yet, if that were true, then why are so many people with wealth, possessions, and fame still living in quiet misery? The answer is simple because true happiness is never just about what you get, it is about what you give. There is a powerful difference between temporary pleasure and lasting joy. Pleasure is what you feel when you buy something new, when you receive recognition, when you achieve a goal. It feels good, but only for a moment. That excitement wears off quickly, and before long, you're already chasing the next thing. Joy, however, comes when you contribute, when you share, when you know your actions have made life brighter for someone else. That kind of fulfillment lasts far longer because it isn't tied to things, it is tied to meaning. Think about this. Some of the happiest faces you will ever see are not always the ones of people standing on stages or holding trophies. Sometimes the happiest faces belong to a parent who sacrifices their comfort to give their child a better future, or to a teacher who invests extra hours to make sure a struggling student finally understands, or to a volunteer who serves meals at a shelter and sees gratitude shining in the eyes of a stranger. That kind of happiness cannot be bought. It can only be experienced through giving. Science even backs this up. Researchers at the University of British Columbia conducted an experiment where they gave two groups of people some money. One group was told to spend the money on themselves, and the other group was told to spend it on others. At the end of the day, the group who gave their money away reported feeling significantly happier than those who kept it. The fascinating part, the amount of money didn't matter. Whether it was a large sum or just a few dollars, the act of giving sparked a sense of joy that spending on oneself simply couldn't produce. This is often referred to as the helper's high, a natural release of feel-good chemicals in the brain when we serve, give, or support others. Let me share a story. There was a wealthy businessman who spent most of his life chasing success. He had cars, properties, influence, but still felt an emptiness he could not explain. One day, almost on impulse, he decided to fund scholarships for children in his hometown who could not afford an education. Years later, one of those children, now a doctor, returned to thank him. The businessman wept not because he had gained more recognition, but because he realized his giving had changed someone else's destiny. In that moment, he discovered a level of happiness that all his possessions had failed to deliver. His joy didn't come from what he had accumulated. It came from what he had released into the lives of others. Now think about your own life. How many times have you felt the spark of happiness after helping someone? Maybe it was as simple as buying a meal for someone in need. Maybe it was giving your time to listen to a friend going through pain. Maybe it was donating clothes or supporting a cause. That sense of fulfillment you felt, that warmth in your heart, was a reminder that happiness is rooted in generosity. And here's the most beautiful part. You don't have to be wealthy or powerful to give. Giving is not just about money. Giving is about time, about kindness, about encouragement, about love. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give is simply being present, offering a smile, or telling someone they matter. Happiness grows when you shift the focus off yourself and start asking, what can I do for others? Self-centered living creates emptiness because no matter how much you gain, it will never be enough. But when you live outwardly, when you choose to pour into others, something remarkable happens. You begin to feel richer, even if nothing in your bank account has changed. Happiness multiplies when it is shared. And the truth is, when you give, you don't just bless others. You transform yourself. You start to see the world differently. Gratitude deepens, purpose becomes clearer, and suddenly the burdens you once carried don't feel as heavy. Because when your life is about more than just you, you tap into a source of joy that circumstances cannot take away. One of the greatest thieves of happiness is not what is happening in your life right now, but what you are still holding on to from yesterday. Many people walk through life carrying heavy baggage they were never meant to carry for so long. They hold on to old wounds, past betrayals, missed opportunities, and words that cut them deeply. And while the world around them has moved forward, their hearts remain anchored in a place of pain. Happiness and freedom cannot live in a heart that is chained to bitterness. To truly experience joy, there comes a time when you must let go. Letting go does not mean forgetting, and it does not mean pretending the hurt never happened. What it means is choosing not to let the pain control your emotions or dictate your future. Many of us replay old scenes in our minds over and over again, almost like a movie that never stops. We hear the words someone spoke to us years ago. You're not good enough. You'll never succeed. You don't matter. And instead of letting those words fade into the past, We keep them alive by giving them power every single day. The truth is, the moment may be gone, but the pain remains alive because we refuse to release it. Imagine trying to climb a mountain while carrying a backpack full of rocks. Every step becomes heavier, every movement slower, and eventually you lose the energy to keep climbing. That is exactly what happens when you hold on to anger, resentment, and unforgiveness. The weight of the past crushes your spirit, making it impossible to rise into happiness. But when you take off the backpack, when you lay down the rocks you were never meant to carry, suddenly the climb becomes lighter and joy becomes possible again. There is a powerful story about two monks traveling together. They came to a river where a woman was struggling to cross. One monk carried her across, set her down, and then continued on the journey. Hours later, the other monk suddenly exploded, saying, "I can't believe you carried that woman. You know we are not supposed to touch women." The first monk looked at him calmly and replied, "I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" That story illustrates what many of us do. We continue carrying burdens in our minds and hearts long after the actual moment has passed. And as long as we carry them, happiness remains out of reach. Psychologists have found that holding on to grudges not only damages emotional health, but also physical health. Studies show that chronic resentment increases stress levels, raises blood pressure, and weakens the immune system. In contrast, people who practice forgiveness experience lower anxiety, better mental clarity, and greater overall happiness. This is not about excusing the wrong someone did to you, but about choosing not to let that wrong live rent-free in your heart. Forgiveness is not about saying, "It's okay." It is about saying, "I will no longer let what you did steal my peace." Think about your own life. Is there someone who wronged you years ago, but even now, just hearing their name stirs anger inside you? Is there a moment you keep replaying, wishing you could go back and change it, but knowing you can't? The danger of holding on is that it keeps you living in a prison built by your own mind. The door to that prison is already unlocked, but you remain inside because you will not release the past. Letting go is not weakness, it is strength. It takes courage to say, "Yes, I was hurt, but I will not let that hurt define me. Yes, I was disappointed, but I will not let that disappointment control my future." Even in everyday life, happiness requires us to release things that weigh us down. Maybe it's the jealousy you feel when you scroll through social media and compare your life to others. Maybe it's the guilt from mistakes you made years ago, mistakes you cannot erase but keep punishing yourself for. Or maybe it's the fear of what could go wrong that keeps you from taking the first step toward your dreams. Letting go does not only apply to people, sometimes it applies to the unrealistic expectations and lies we keep telling ourselves. The truth is, the human heart was not designed to hold endless bitterness and endless fear. You were created for joy, for peace, for growth. But to step into that kind of life, you have to make the brave decision to release what is holding you back. Happiness is not only found in gaining something new, but very often it is found in releasing what should have been left behind a long time ago. One of the deepest truths about happiness is that it cannot be sustained by possessions, status, or even temporary successes. Money can run out, appearances fade, achievements lose their shine, but a life anchored in purpose carries a joy that circumstances cannot shake. Happiness is not simply about feeling good in the moment. It is about waking up every day with a sense of meaning, knowing that your life matters and that your actions make a difference. When you live with purpose, even the ordinary becomes extraordinary because everything you do is connected to something greater than yourself. Look around at the people who seem most fulfilled. Often they are not the richest, nor are they always the most powerful. Some of the happiest people are teachers who pour themselves into their students, nurses who care for patients with compassion, or parents who dedicate themselves to raising their children with love. Their joy doesn't come from recognition or wealth. It comes from knowing that what they do carries value. Their purpose fills them with strength to endure challenges and satisfaction that outlast fleeting pleasures. There is research to support this. A study published in the Journal of Positive Psychology found that people who reported having a strong sense of purpose in life experienced greater levels of overall well-being, lived longer, and were more resilient in the face of stress. Purpose provided them with a foundation that material success could not. Even when setbacks came, their happiness remained because it was anchored not in what they had, but in why they lived. Let me share a story. A A man spent years climbing the corporate ladder, chasing promotions and pay raises, believing that each new level would finally bring happiness. Yet every time he reached the top of one rung, the joy disappeared quickly and the hunger for more returned. One day, after burning out, he took time to reflect on what truly gave him life. He realized that his greatest satisfaction came not from the meetings, the titles, or the numbers on his paycheck, but from the moments when he mentored younger colleagues and helped them find their own path. That realization shifted his focus. Instead of chasing status, he chose to live in alignment with his deeper purpose of guiding and developing others. From that point, work no longer felt empty. It became a channel for meaning. His happiness increased not because his circumstances improved dramatically, but because his sense of purpose gave his work weight and direction. Purpose is powerful because it transforms how you experience life's struggles. Without purpose, difficulties feel like obstacles designed to crush you. With purpose, those same difficulties become challenges that strengthen you. A mother caring for a sick child may endure sleepless nights and immense stress, but her purpose, to love and nurture her child, gives her the strength to keep going. A student working 3 jobs to pay for school may be exhausted, but the purpose of building a better future gives him motivation to press on. Purpose gives suffering meaning, and when suffering has meaning, it does not steal happiness. It refines it. Another important truth about purpose is that it is not always tied to grand achievements. Many people believe purpose has to mean starting a global movement or becoming famous. But purpose can be as simple as being a light in your family, being dependable at work, or spreading kindness in your community. Your purpose does not have to be loud to be powerful. Happiness is often hidden in those quiet moments where you realize that what you did today mattered to someone, even if the world didn't notice. And here's the key: happiness rooted in purpose does not depend on circumstances being perfect. A person who knows their why can withstand storms that others cannot. Because when you are connected to purpose, you do not live for applause, you live for impact. You do not need constant validation because you already know that what you are doing is meaningful. Purpose keeps you grounded when life is shaky and lifts you when discouragement tries to pull you down. So many people live unfulfilled, not because they lack success, but because they lack purpose. They are busy, they are productive, they are achieving, but deep inside they feel empty because they have not yet connected what they do with why they exist. But when you discover your purpose, everything changes. Your work gains meaning, your relationships deepen, your struggles feel lighter, and your happiness stops depending on what you get. It flows from who you are and what you give to the world.